Under the silver moonlight, I heard the scrape of an axe against stone, each grating slide slicing through the night like a warning whispered from the grave. Easter Sunday was meant to be a day of light, a family gathered around a table heavy, with food and laughter. But as my brother and I stepped into the park that night, the world felt wrong. The air was too still, the shadows too sharp, as if the park itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. My brother, always the bold one, strode ahead, his boots crunching the gravel path, while I lagged behind, my jacket pulled, tight against a chill that wasn't just the spring air. The park, a place we'd known since we were kids, felt like a stranger now, its familiar trails twisting into something sinister. We'd been roommates for years, sharing a cramped apartment, a short walk from our parents' house. Every Easter, we'd make the pilgrimage through the park, a tradition rooted in childhood memories of egg hunts and sunny afternoons. Back then, the park was a playground, alive with the hum of cicadas and the chatter of families. But we'd heard the stories even as kids, whispers about the Bunnyman Bridge, a concrete arch halfway through the park where the trail dipped into darkness. The tale spoke of a man in a rabbit costume, a killer who haunted the bridge, his axe dripping with blood. We'd laughed them off, called them campfire nonsense. But that night, as we approached the bridge, those stories didn't feel so far-fetched. The park was quieter than it should have been. The distant hum of the city had faded, replaced by a low, uneven rustle from the bushes lining the trail. My brother stopped, his head cocked, eyes scanning the undergrowth. "You hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart thudded, a cold sweat prickling my skin. The sound wasn't the wind, it was deliberate, like footsteps snapping twigs circling us. We stood frozen, the beam of my brother's flashlight trembling as it swept the darkness. Nothing moved. No animal darted out to ease our nerves. Just silence, thick and suffocating, pressing against my chest like a warning. "Keep walking, don't look back," my mind urged, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. We pushed forward, our steps quickening, the bridge looming ahead like a gate to another world. Its concrete walls were slick with moss, the air inside heavy, with the scent of damp stone and decay. Our footsteps echoed, sharp and frantic, as we hurried through the tunnel. Emerging on the other side, I exhaled, thinking we'd escaped whatever was out there. But then it came. A sharp human whistle, not a bird, not a breeze, but a deliberate mocking sound that cut through the night like a blade. My brother grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "Move," he hissed, his voice shaking for the first time I could remember. We ran, the path stretching endlessly, the whistle chasing us, growing louder, closer, until it felt like it was inside my skull. We reached our parents' house, breathless, hearts pounding, but the warmth of their home dulled the fear. The smell of roasted ham and the clink of glasses filled the air, and we laughed off the scare, blaming it on nerves, on too many childhood stories. We stayed late, talking, eating, the park fading into the background of family chatter. But as the night grew heavy, the thought of walking back through that darkness clawed at me. I suggested an Uber, my voice light but my stomach twisting. My brother rolled his eyes, his grin wide but strained. "You're overreacting," he said, clapping my shoulder. "Nothing's out there. Let's go." Against every instinct, I followed him back into the night. The park was a different beast now. Pitch black, the trail swallowed by shadows, our phone flashlights barely piercing the void. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the sky, their leaves whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. My heart hammered, each step a battle against the urge to turn back. I opened my mouth to beg my brother to reconsider, to call a ride, but before I could, the rustle came again. Louder, violent, like the forest itself was waking. Then the whistle, sharp and close, sliced through the silence. My brother's face went white, his flashlight shaking in his hand. "Run," he said, and we bolted, gravel flying under our feet as we raced for the bridge. The tunnel loomed ahead, its mouth a gaping void. We plunged inside, the walls closing in, the air thick with the stench of rot. Our footsteps echoed, a frantic drumbeat, as we pushed to reach the other side. Relief surged as we emerged, but it was fleeting. The whistle sounded again, so close, it felt like it was breathing down our necks. We spun around, and there he was, a figure at the tunnel's exit, dressed in a tattered Easter bunny costume, its white fur stained with dirt and something darker. In his hand, an axe gleamed, its blade catching the faint moonlight. His eyes, hidden behind the costume's black sockets, seemed to burn with a hunger that wasn't human. Time froze, the world shrinking to that figure, that axe, that impossible nightmare. My brother's voice broke the silence, shaky but defiant. "What's with this guy, some psycho from the mall?" I tried to laugh, to cling to reason, but the words died in my throat. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, the axe dangling loosely, its blade glinting like a promise. Then my brother stumbled, his ankle twisting on a root. He fell, cursing, clutching his leg. The figure moved, fast too. Fast, the axe rising as he charged. "Stay away!" I screamed, my voice raw, tearing through the night. My brother scrambled, his eyes wide with terror, his hands clawing at the ground. "Help!" he shouted, his voice breaking into a sob. I wanted to stay, to fight, to drag him to safety, but my body betrayed me. My legs moved on their own, carrying me away from the bridge, away from the monster, away from my brother's screams. The whistle followed, mocking, as his cries grew fainter, swallowed by the dark. I ran until my lungs burned, until the park gave way to streets, to lights, to the illusion of safety. Collapsing on the sidewalk, I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and called the police, sobbing, begging them to save him. They arrived quickly, their flashlights cutting through the night as they escorted me back to the bridge. What I saw there will never leave me. Blood everywhere, pooling on the pavement, streaking the grass, soaking into the earth. My brother's body was unrecognizable, torn apart, scattered like broken toys. The bunny man was gone, vanished into the night like a ghost, leaving only carnage and silence. The police searched, combed the woods, questioned everyone, but no arrests were ever made. The internet called it an urban legend, a story to scare kids, but I know what I saw. I hear his screams every night, feel the weight of my cowardice, the moment I ran and left him to die. The Bunny Man Bridge is more than a story now. It's a scar on my soul, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. They say if you stand on the bridge at midnight and whisper, "Bunny Man," 3 times he'll appear, axe in hand, ready to claim you. I don't need to test it. I've seen him, felt the chill of his presence, and paid the price. The bridge still stands, its shadow stretching longer with every passing year, waiting for the next soul to cross its path. Every Easter, I lock my doors, but the whistle still finds me echoing in my dreams, a reminder that some horrors never let you go. It was supposed to be a quick errand, a simple trip to buy a pair of shoes, but the moment I stepped into that Foot Locker, the air felt wrong, like a whisper of dread brushing against my skin. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the rows of sneakers, their bright colors mocking the unease curling in my gut. The store was alive with chatter, customers weaving through aisles, their voices a chaotic hum. I needed new shoes, something practical, nothing fancy. But the second I crossed the threshold, I felt eyes on me, sharp and unyielding, like needles, pricking the back of my neck. The store was packed, a Saturday afternoon crowd buzzing with energy. Teenagers laughed over Air Jordans. Parents haggled over prices and employees darted between shelves, their red polo shirts flashing like warning signals. I tried to focus, scanning the racks for something in my size, but that feeling of being watched clung to me heavy and suffocating. I turned, half expecting to find nothing, but there he was, a tall, lanky figure standing 3 aisles over, his gaze locked on me. He was an employee, his Foot Locker badge glinting under the lights, but there was something off about him. His eyes were too wide, his skin too pale, like he hadn't seen daylight in weeks. His lips twitched into a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and I felt my stomach twist. I shook it off, telling myself it was nothing, just an overworked retail worker, maybe a little socially awkward. I moved to the men's section, running my fingers over the sleek leather of a pair of Nikes. But the weight of his stare followed me. Every step I took, I could feel it, like a shadow trailing my every move. I glanced up, and there he was again, closer now, standing at the end of the aisle, his head tilted slightly, watching. Why is he staring like that? My heart quickened, a pulse of unease thrumming through me. I forced a smile, hoping he'd back off, but he didn't. Instead, he took a step closer, his shoes squeaking faintly against the polished floor. Need help with anything? His voice was low, almost a hiss, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Up close, he looked even worse, his eyes sunken, his fingers twitching like he was barely holding himself together. I mumbled a polite refusal, my voice tighter than I intended, and turned back to the shoes. But he didn't leave. He lingered, his presence a suffocating weight, like the air itself was pressing down on me. Just ignore him, pick a pair and get out. I grabbed a box of black sneakers, size 10, and pretended to study the label, hoping he'd take the hint. He didn't. Instead, he leaned in, his breath hot against my ear. Your feet, they're perfect. Bet they'd look even better barefoot. Ever thought about modeling? Nike would love you. Or maybe... He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. Maybe an OnlyFans for those feet. My blood ran cold. The words hung in the air, grotesque and invasive, like a violation I couldn't name. I forced a laugh, awkward and strained, and stepped back, clutching the shoebox like a shield. Thanks, but I'm good, I said, my voice barely steady. He smiled again, that same empty grin, and shuffled off to a corner, his eyes never leaving me. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding so loud I was sure the whole store could hear it. What the hell was that? The chatter of customers, the hum of the lights, the squeak of shoes on the floor, it all blurred into a dizzying haze. I wanted to leave, to run out the door and never look back, but I needed those shoes. I couldn't let some creep ruin my day. I scanned the store for another employee, but they were all busy, swarmed by customers waving boxes and asking questions. I was stuck. If I wanted these shoes, I'd have to deal with him. Steeling myself, I walked toward him, the box still in my hands. His eyes tracked me the entire way, unblinking, like a predator watching prey. Excuse me, I said, my voice clipped. Can you check if you have these in my size? He stared at me for a long moment, his lips curling into that sickening smile. Sure thing, he said, almost too eagerly, and disappeared into the back room. I waited, my nerves fraying, with every passing second. The store felt smaller now, the walls closing in, the air thick with something I couldn't name. Minutes dragged on, 5, 10, maybe more. What's taking so long? I shifted on my feet, glancing at the other employees, but they were still swamped. I was alone with my thoughts, and they were spiraling. Finally, he emerged, a shoebox in, his hands, his face slick with sweat. Sorry for the wait, he said, his voice dripping with something I couldn't place. but I think you'll find it was worth it." He handed me the box, his fingers brushing mine for a split second. "Too long." I flinched, clutching the box tighter, and muttered a quick thanks. His smile widened and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I hurried to the checkout, praying someone else would ring me up. But of course, it was him. The other registers were still busy and he was waiting, his eyes gleaming with something dark and unreadable. I avoided his gaze as he scanned the box, his fingers moving slowly, deliberately. "You've been my favorite customer this week," he said, his voice low and intimate, like we shared some twisted secret. My skin crawled. I shoved my card into the machine, my hands shaking, and grabbed the bag as soon as the transaction cleared. "Have a nice day," he called after me, his tone mocking as I practically ran out of the store. The parking lot was a blur of cars and fading daylight, the bag swinging heavily in my hand. My heart was still racing, my mind replaying. His words, his stare, that touch. "Just get to the car, you're fine," but I wasn't fine. Something felt wrong, like a splinter lodged under my skin. I slid into the driver's seat, tossing the bag onto the passenger side, and took a deep breath. The shoes were perfect, exactly what I wanted. I decided to try them on, hoping it would ground me, pull me back to normalcy. I slipped off my old sneakers, peeled off my socks, and slid my feet into the new ones. They felt wrong, wet, sticky. A faint smell hit me, sharp and acrid like ammonia. My stomach lurched. I yanked the shoes off, my hands trembling, and stared at the insoles. They were coated in a viscous, white, clear substance glistening under the dim light of the parking lot. The smell was unmistakable now. Piss. My breath caught in my throat, bile rising as the truth hit me. He did this. That creep, that sick freak, had done something to my shoes. I checked my socks, now damp and stained, and felt a wave of nausea crash over me. My mind flashed back to his sweaty face, his lingering touch, his words about my feet. This wasn't an accident. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The operator's voice was calm, clinical, but I was spiraling, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "There's something in my shoes. This guy at Foot Locker. He's sick, he did something disgusting." The police arrived quickly, their lights flashing across the parking lot like a warning. I explained everything, the staring, the comments, the shoes. They took the box, the shoes, my statement, and headed into the store. I sat in my car, wrapped in a blanket an officer gave me, watching as they led him out in handcuffs. His head was bowed, but I could still see that smile, that same twisted grin like he'd won some sick game. They caught him staring at another customer, a woman, from across the store, his eyes locked on her with that same predatory intensity. The police later told me he'd admitted to it, not just to me, but to others. He'd been doing it for weeks, maybe months, slipping into the back room to defile shoes before handing them to unsuspecting customers. The thought made my skin crawl, a violation so deep it felt like it had seeped into my bones. I threw out every pair of shoes I owned that night, unable to trust anything I'd worn before. I haven't stepped foot in a Foot Locker since, and I don't think I ever will. Every night I see his face in my dreams, that smile haunting me, his voice whispering about my feet. The store, once a mundane place, is now a nightmare etched into my mind. A reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, behind a badge and a smile. I'm not the same person I was when I walked into that store. Something broke inside me that day, and no amount of scrubbing can wash away the stain he left behind. My heart was a runaway train, pounding with a reckless hope that refused to slow down. It was March, and the air carried the faint promise of spring, but all I could think about was Farida Khatun. We'd been together for over a year. Our lives, entwined like vines in a garden I'd tended with every ounce of my soul. I was obsessed with her, not in a suffocating way, but in the way you love someone so fiercely you can't imagine a world without them. I wanted to marry her, to build a life together, to escape the confines of our parents' homes and create something of our own. By the time April Fool's Day arrived, I couldn't wait any longer. The ring, a delicate silver band with a diamond that caught the light like a tiny star, burned a hole in my pocket. This was no prank. This was my truth. The evening sky was a bruise of purple and gold as I walked to Farida's house, my palms sweaty despite the cool breeze. Her parents were out and the house felt strangely quiet, like it was holding its breath. We sat on her couch, the same one we'd spent countless nights on, laughing over bad movies or whispering secrets in the dark. Tonight, though, the air felt different, thicker, heavier, like a storm was brewing beneath the surface. We started kissing almost immediately, our bodies falling into that familiar rhythm. Usually we'd move to her bedroom, but this time, passion overtook us right there in the living room. The world blurred into a haze of warmth and want, and for a moment everything felt perfect. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head resting on my chest. My heart was still racing, not from desire, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I could feel the ring in my pocket, a silent promise pressing against my thigh. My nerves were electric, sparking with fear and hope. What if she says no? What if she laughs, thinking it's a joke? I pushed the thoughts away, anchoring myself to the moment. She giggled, sensing my tension, her voice soft and teasing. "What's got you so nervous, Rahan? You weren't this shy a few minutes ago." Her eyes sparkled with mischief and I forced a smile, my throat tight. I sat up, taking her hand, my fingers trembling as they brushed against hers. "Hey, I've got something to ask you," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Her brows lifted, curious, encouraging. "Just spit it out," she said, squeezing my hand. "You know you don't have to be nervous around me." I took a deep breath, the room spinning slightly, as if reality itself was slipping. This is it. This is the moment. "Farida," I said, my voice cracking, "will you marry me?" I pulled the ring from my pocket, holding it out like an offering to a goddess. The diamond glinted in the dim light, a beacon of my heart's intent. Her face changed, softened, then froze. The silence stretched, a chasm opening between us. "Rahan, I'm sorry, but no." Her words hit like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I blinked, my mind struggling to process. "What?" I whispered, the ring trembling in my hand. "It's too soon," she said gently, her eyes avoiding mine. "We're not ready for this." My heart screamed in protest, but my voice was a hollow echo. Is this an April Fool's prank?" I asked, desperation creeping in. "You're joking, right?" She shook her head, her expression firm. "No, Rahan, I'm not joking." The room seemed to tilt, the edges of my vision blurring. She's serious. She means it. My love for her, so fierce and unshakable, began to curdle into something darker. I stood, pacing the room, my hands shaking as I clutched the ring. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I've given you everything, Farida. Everything." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wanted her to see my pain, to understand what she'd done. She stood, her voice calm but sharp. "Rahan, you need to calm down. This isn't the end of the world." Her words were a match to gasoline. Not the end of the world, I shouted. You've just destroyed my world. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if the room itself was closing in. She doesn't love you. She never did. My mind spiraled, a trance-like loop of betrayal and rage. I tried to reason with her, my voice breaking. Farida, please tell me you're joking. Tell me you didn't mean it. But she only shook her head, her eyes filled with pity. Pity. That was worse than rejection. My love, my devotion, reduced to something pathetic. I couldn't breathe. The walls pulsed with my heartbeat. The room a fevered dream of heartbreak and fury. Before I knew what I was doing, I was in the kitchen, my hand closing around the handle of a knife. The blade gleamed, cold and merciless, a mirror to the storm inside me. Make her feel it, make her understand. I walked back to the living room, my steps slow, deliberate, each one echoing in my skull like a drumbeat. Farida's eyes widened as she saw the knife, her voice trembling. Rahan, what are you doing? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The world had narrowed to a single point. Her face, her fear, her betrayal. She broke you. Now break her. The thought was a whisper, a command, slithering through my mind. I lunged, the knife flashing in the dim light. Her scream pierced the air, sharp and raw as she stumbled backward. The couch tipped over, crashing to the floor, and we fell together, a tangled mess of rage and despair. I don't remember how many times the blade struck, only the wet warmth of blood on my hands, the sound of her gasping fading. The room spun, a nightmare carousel, and I was no longer myself, just a shadow, a monster born of a broken heart. I dropped the knife, the clatter deafening in the silence. My hands were slick, trembling as I staggered to my feet. Farida lay still, her eyes open, unseeing, a grotesque parody of the woman I loved. What have you done? I ran, my legs heavy, my mind a fractured mirror of guilt and horror. The night, air was cold, biting as I fled her house, the world blurring into streaks of shadow and light. I hid at home, scrubbing the blood from my skin in the shower, but it wouldn't wash away. The water ran red, swirling down the drain like my life, my love, my sanity. I sat in the bathtub, the water pounding over me, unable to stand, unable to think. It was just an April Fool's prank. It had to be. I told myself this over and over, a desperate mantra to keep the truth at bay. But it wasn't a prank. It was real. Her screams, her blood, her lifeless eyes, they were real. I saw them every time I closed my eyes, a relentless loop of terror and regret. I didn't mean to hurt her, I didn't mean to become this thing, this hollow shell of a man. But I did. The police came for me that night, their lights flashing, like the pulse of my guilt. Farida's parents must have found her, their screams echoing in my mind as they discovered their daughter's body. I didn't resist when the cuffs snapped around my wrists. I deserved it. I deserved worse. Every day since, I've relived that moment, that knife, that betrayal. April Fool's Day, once a day of laughter, is now a prison of nightmares. I see her face, her fear, her blood every night. I hear her voice begging, fading. I am the monster in my own story, and there is no escape. This story was inspired by a horrific April Fool's incident that happened on Saturday, March 30th. A man named Rahan Ahmed allegedly took out his girlfriend, Farida Khatun, for turning down his marriage proposal with a knife. The incident took place at Shalini Ground in Gyanaga VB block. Reports say that the victim and the accused were in a relationship for more than a year. The victim happened to be a mother of 2 daughters and worked at a spa. The accused worked as a spare car driver. The duo first met in 2022 at a spa and eventually entered into a relationship. After an outing, Rahan proposed to Khatun for marriage. However, she denied his proposal. Rahan assumed that it had to be an April Fool's prank. But things went left when he came to the realization that this was in fact a reality, and that's when Rahan lashed out with a knife and did what he did. A coconut seller nearby saw the victim lying in a pool of her own blood and subsequently called the police. By the time the victim was found, the accused had fled the spot. However, later on, the accused surrendered at the police station. The needle gleamed under the dim bedroom lamp, its sharp tip promising salvation, but I felt my body unraveling, as if my flesh were dissolving into the shadows. In my 50s, I carried the weight of years, not just in my body, but in my heart. Once, my husband and I were inseparable, our days filled with gym sessions, laughter, and dreams of a shared future. We were young, fit, our love a vibrant thread weaving us together. But time had been cruel to me. My body softened, then swelled, each pound a reminder of my failure. My husband, though, fought back the years, his muscles taut again, his confidence, a beacon I couldn't reach. I was a shadow of the woman he'd married, trapped in a body that felt like a cage. Our marriage, once a haven, became a battlefield. Dinners were silent, his eyes fixed on his plate, avoiding the curve of my waist, the heaviness of my steps. The smell of roasted chicken, once a comfort, now felt like an accusation. "You're letting yourself go," he'd say, his voice sharp, slicing through my defenses. I'd nod, tears burning my eyes, but the gym was a distant memory, its machines mocking my weakness. Diets came and went, each failure deepening my shame. I saw the disappointment in his gaze, the way his hands no longer lingered on mine. The love we'd built was slipping away, and I was too heavy, too broken to hold it. One night, his frustration erupted. "I'm killing myself to be better, and you're just giving up," he shouted, his words a fist to my chest. I stood, frozen, my reflection in the window showing a woman I didn't recognize. Sagging skin, tired eyes, a stranger in my own home. I wanted to scream that I was trying, that I hated myself more than he ever could, but the words choked me. Instead, I cried, my sobs echoing in the empty space between us. Without telling me, he booked a doctor's appointment, driving me there like a child to be fixed. The doctor's office was cold, the air thick with antiseptic, the scales numbers, a public shaming. "You're severely obese," the doctor said, his tone clinical, "and you have type 2 diabetes." He prescribed Ozempic, a drug to control my blood sugar, promising weight loss as a bonus. My husband's eyes sparked with hope, as if this was the answer to everything. I tried to follow the plan. My husband became my jailer, measuring my portions, banning bread, his presence a constant pressure. The Ozempic injections burned, the needle piercing my skin each week, a sharp sting that promised change. "Inject it. Become enough," a voice whispered in my mind. At first it worked. My appetite faded. The scales numbers dropped, and I felt a flicker of pride, a glimpse of the woman I'd been. But the diet was a prison, each meal a reminder of my failure. When my husband was gone, I'd order fast food, the greasy bags, a secret rebellion. The taste of fries, warm and salty, was a fleeting escape. I'd hide the wrappers, but he always found them, his face twisting with disgust. "If you cheat on this diet again," he said one night, his voice low and cold, "I'll cheat on you." His threat felt hollow, a desperate bluff. I tested him, leaving burger wrappers in the trash, daring him to act. For weeks he said nothing, and I thought I'd called his bluff. Then one night he didn't come home. When he returned at dawn, his shirt rumpled, his eyes avoiding mine, I accused him. "Her name's Lisa," he said, his voice flat. We stayed at the Marriott. My world shattered, the air sucked from the room, but he wasn't done. "I want a divorce," he said, his words a blade through my soul. "I'm going to Thailand for a month. If you haven't changed by the time I'm back, it's over." Panic consumed me. Without him, I'd be nothing. Alone, unloved, a relic of a life I'd ruined. I went back to the doctor, my hands trembling, begging for a miracle. He warned me about Ozempic's side effects: nausea, pancreatitis, organ damage, but I didn't care. I needed to be enough, to be wanted. That night, I sat at my bedside, the syringe in my hand, its needle glinting like a lifeline. "Inject it. Save yourself," the voice urged. I pressed the needle into my skin, the sting sharp but fleeting, a promise of redemption. I thought of my friend Sarah, who'd tried Ozempic too, her body shrinking but her eyes growing hollow, her voice trembling as she spoke of nausea that wouldn't stop. I pushed the thought away. I had to be stronger. The weeks that followed were a descent into hell. The Ozempic worked too well, stripping away pounds but taking more. My skin turned sallow. My hair fell in clumps, my eyes sank into dark sockets. Nausea was my constant companion, a churning in my gut like something was rotting inside. I'd lie awake, my body aching, the room spinning, the syringe on my nightstand a cruel idol. "Keep going, you're almost there," the voice whispered. But I felt like I was dissolving, my flesh peeling away, my mind unraveling. I saw Sarah's face in my dreams, her skeletal frame a warning I ignored. She'd stopped Ozempic too late, her body failing, her family mourning a woman they no longer knew. When my husband returned, he recoiled at the sight of me. "What happened to you?" he gasped, his voice thick with horror. My reflection in his eyes was a monster, gaunt, skeletal, a ghost of the woman I'd been. My bones pressed against my skin, my hands trembling like brittle twigs. I wanted to scream that this was his fault, that he'd pushed me to this, but my voice broke into a sob. "You did this," I whispered, my words barely audible. He stepped closer, his face softening with pity, not love. "You need a hospital," he said, his hand reaching for me. "Something's wrong." "Wrong? Nothing was ever right for you, was it?" The voice in my head roared, drowning out his words. My vision blurred, the room tilting, the syringe on the table calling to me like a siren. I grabbed it, my hands moving on their own, and lunged at him. "You wanted this," I screamed, my voice raw, unhinged, a stranger's cry. He stumbled back, his eyes wide with fear, but I was faster, fueled by a rage I didn't understand. The needle plunged into his arm, his scream piercing the air as I collapsed, the world fading to black. I woke in a hospital, tubes snaking from my arms, my husband's absence a gaping wound. The doctors said the Ozempic had ravaged me, pancreatitis, organ stress, my body a battlefield. They spoke of Sarah, how she'd suffered the same fate, her body failing, her mind lost to paranoia. "Don't let it take you," they warned, but I was already gone. The drug had promised salvation, but it delivered ruin, turning me into a monster I didn't recognize. Every needle mark on my skin is a scar, a reminder of what I lost, my health, my marriage, my humanity. I see that syringe in my dreams, its glint a taunt, whispering that I'll never be enough. The scent of warm bread and blooming lilacs filled our home, but beneath the festive glow of Easter Sunday a darkness waited, its claws tightening around my heart. Our house stood like a beacon of family, its wide porch and sunlit rooms a canvas for memories of laughter and love. Every Easter it became a sanctuary, filled with the clatter of dishes, the chatter of cousins, and the joy of children racing through the garden, clutching painted eggs. Yet this year, a shadow lingered in the corners, a presence that chilled the warmth of our traditions. His name was Robert, my older brother, a man whose strangeness had grown into something far more sinister, a specter haunting the edges of our lives. Our home was the largest in the family, a two-story haven with creaking floorboards and windows that caught the morning light in golden slivers. My wife and I raised 3 boys here, their boundless energy filling the halls with life. Holidays were our pride. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and especially Easter, when aunts, uncles, and cousins poured in, their voices weaving a tapestry of stories and laughter. This Easter was no different. The dining table sagged under plates of glazed ham, creamy potatoes, and vibrant salads, while the air carried the sweet tang of spring flowers. But Robert was the fracture in this perfect scene. He'd been a peculiar child, always apart, his oddities sharpening with age. School dropout, jobless drifter, he was a ghost in his own existence. 5 years ago, when he came to me, broken, penniless, drowning in debt, I opened our door. How could I abandon my own blood? But Robert wasn't a guest, he was a parasite. He claimed the guest room, locking himself inside, his world reduced to the flicker of a TV screen and the stale air of his isolation. He emerged only for necessities, his gaunt frame and hollow eyes unsettling everyone. My wife's patience wore thin, her voice sharp with frustration. "He's scaring the boys," she'd say, her words heavy with worry. The kids whispered about the creepy man in the next room. His stares too intense, his voice too soft, like a secret they weren't meant to hear. Relatives pulled me aside at every gathering, their eyes pleading, "He's not right. Get him out." But guilt anchored me. I saw our childhood in his face, the games we played, the promises we made, and I couldn't let him sink into the streets. That Easter morning dawned bright, the sun painting the walls with warmth, the garden alive with the squeals of children, hunting eggs. My wife and her sister moved in sync in the kitchen, the clink of pots and the aroma of baking bread weaving a spell of normalcy. Nearly 20 of us filled the house. Cousins sprawled on couches, uncles debating politics, aunts sharing recipes. The living room hummed as we watched a movie, the flicker of the screen holding us together. For hours, Robert was absent, locked, away in his room, and I dared to hope we'd have one day untouched by his shadow. Maybe this time we'll be free of him. Then it came, a heavy thud from upstairs like a door flung open with force. The sound cut through the chatter, freezing my wife mid-motion, her knife hovering over a cutting board. "What was that?" she whispered, her eyes darting to the ceiling. I forced a shrug, my voice too casual. "Just Robert, probably." But the air thickened, a cold dread settling over the room like frost. Minutes later, he descended the stairs, his clothes rumpled, his face pale as bone. "Can I get some water?" he asked, his voice flat, his eyes scanning us like a predator sizing up prey. Before I could respond, he bent down to my youngest son, his lips moving in a low whisper. My boy's face drained of color, his small body shrinking back. My wife's voice sliced through the tension. "Get him away from our son. Now." My heart pounded, a drumbeat of fear. I crossed the room, placing a hand on Robert's shoulder, my voice steady but strained. "Let's head upstairs, okay?" His eyes met mine, dark and bottomless, a void that swallowed the light. He didn't resist, just turned and climbed the stairs, each step heavy, like a warning carved into the silence. The room exhaled, voices picking up, but the warmth had fled. My wife's sister leaned close, her words sharp. He shouldn't be here. I wanted to defend him, to cling to the brother I once knew, but doubt gnawed at me. What did he say to my son? What's he hiding? Dinner came 2 hours later. The table a feast of colors and scents. Golden ham, steaming rolls, bowls of bright greens. We gathered, forcing cheer, our voices loud to drown out the unease. I stood to say grace, my hands clasped, my words a plea for unity. Let's give thanks for this family, this moment. But before I could finish, Robert appeared in the doorway, a specter in the flickering light. Something glinted in his hands, metallic and sharp, catching the chandelier's glow. No, this isn't real. My wife's voice trembled. Robert, what are you doing with that? Time fractured. The world shrank to that blade, its edge gleaming with intent. This can't be happening. Screams erupted, chairs toppled, and chaos swallowed the room. I lunged for my sons, shielding them, but the horror unfolded too fast. Blood painted the floor, a crimson tide seeping into the cracks, the air thick with its iron tang. My family's eyes stared up, lifeless, their faces frozen in betrayal. I failed them. I let him stay. The house, once a haven, became a tomb, its walls echoing with the screams I'd never unhear. Switch to Robert's perspective. I stood among the wreckage, the blade heavy in my hand, its weight a mirror to my soul. They were nothing. Less than nothing. My life had been a series of dead ends, a shadow no one saw, a name no one remembered. They pitied me, whispered about me, but never loved me. In that moment, I was more than their outcast. I was their end. Their voices, their laughter, their meaningless lives, I silenced them all. It wasn't joy, not vengeance, just a hollow release, like cutting a thread to stop its fraying. I made them eternal, even if only in death. I stepped onto the porch, the night air sharp against my skin, the stars indifferent above, one last breath of freedom. I called the police, my voice calm, confessing everything. I'm at 635 Minor Avenue. I did something terrible. They came, their lights slashing the darkness, cuffs cold as they bound my wrists. I didn't fight. I'd carved my name into history and there was no going back. Every Easter their faces haunt me, their blood still warm in my dreams, their eyes asking why. The house is gone, but its ghosts remain, and I am their keeper, locked in a cage of my own making. The phone's light pierced the darkness, its vibration a cruel summons in the dead of night. It was 2:47 a.m., and my dorm room was a cocoon of silence, broken only by the insistent buzz. Kyle's name glowed on the screen, a name that usually brought a mix of laughter and frustration. Why now, Kyle? What madness are you dragging me into? I lay still, my body heavy with exhaustion, willing the call to end, but it didn't. It rang again, then again, each vibration tightening the knot in my chest. Answer it. You can't ignore him forever. Kyle was my opposite, a storm to my calm. I was the engineering student, chained to textbooks and deadlines, my life a grid of schedules and stress. Kyle was a wildfire burning through college with a grin and a knack for chaos. We'd met in a cramped lecture hall, arguing over a thermodynamics problem until we were laughing too hard to care. He'd skip class, pull pranks, and beg me for notes, promising to repay me with pizza or bad jokes. I recorded lectures for him, hoping he'd show up, but he rarely did. He's throwing it all away, I'd think, yet his laughter made the grind bearable. He was my friend, my anchor in a sea of equations. It was April Fool's Day 2025, and I was buried in my dorm, surrounded by the ghosts of past exams, The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and ink. My desk a battlefield of highlighters and crumpled notes. Finals loomed, and I'd ignored Kyle's texts all day, assuming he was off chasing some reckless thrill. He hadn't shown up. To class in weeks, his absence a quiet ache I didn't acknowledge. He's probably gaming or drunk. But now his calls were relentless, each one a needle in my nerves. After the fourth, I snapped, grabbing the phone, my anger ready to spill. This better be good, Kyle. The screen flared to life and my breath caught. Kyle's face was unrecognizable, a mask of terror. His eyes were red, swollen, as if he'd wept until nothing was left. Sweat glistened on his pale skin, his breaths shallow and frantic. Around his neck, a coarse rope, knotted tightly, hung like a noose from a nightmare. The room behind him was dark, a void swallowing the edges of the frame. This isn't real, it's Kyle, he's joking. What the hell is this? I shouted, my voice sharp in the silent dorm. My roommate slept on, unaware of the dread pooling in my gut. Kyle's voice was a rasp, barely human. I don't know where I am. They took me. They said they'll kick the stool if I move. His eyes darted to something unseen, his hands trembling as they clutched the phone. He's faking it. It's April Fool's. Kyle, stop it. This isn't funny. Tell me you're joking. I wanted to believe it was another stunt, like when he'd faked a car accident to skip a midterm. But his face, the raw panic in his eyes, felt too real. The rope seemed to pulse with each breath, a living thing choking him. Please, he whispered. Find me. I'm begging you. Don't hang up. Stay with him. But my anger surged, a tidal wave drowning my fear. You're sick, Kyle. This is too far. April Fool's, right? My voice shook, caught between fury and doubt. I remembered the nights we'd stayed up plotting pranks or dreaming of a future beyond college. Kyle was reckless, but he was mine to protect. Why can't I believe him? I'm not joking, he said, his voice breaking. Please, I couldn't hear it. I ended the call, the screen going black, my hands trembling as I tossed the phone onto the bed. He'll call back. He always does. The silence was a weight, pressing against my chest. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows twisting into shapes I couldn't name. The rope lingered in my mind, its rough texture, its cruel knot. What if it's real? What if he's really in trouble? I saw us at a campus party, Kyle stealing my drink and laughing as I chased him. I saw him failing a quiz, promising to study next time. I saw the friend I couldn't abandon even when he drove me mad. Why did I hang up? Sleep eluded me, the phone's silence a scream in itself. At 4 a.m., it rang again. Kyle's name, 12 missed calls. My heart lurched as I answered, guilt flooding me. Kyle, I'm sorry, His face was worse, pale as bone, the rope tighter, his eyes hollow. April Fool's, he gasped, and the screen went dark. I froze, rage and relief colliding. He did it again, but the relief was fleeting, replaced by a gnawing unease. I stumbled to the kitchen, the bitter smell of coffee grounding me as I explained to my roommates. They laughed, called Kyle a master, but I couldn't shake the image of that rope. Something's wrong. Morning came and Kyle didn't show for class. He's avoiding me. My anger grew, but so did my fear. Kyle loved gloating after a prank, but his silence was deafening. By noon, I was in the library, my notes a blur, when 2 cops and the dean approached. Their faces were grim, their voices low. We need to talk about Kyle. My world tilted. This isn't a prank. They sat me down, and the truth hit like a blade. Kyle was dead. Found by his roommates, the stool tipped over, his phone on the floor. The rope I'd seen was real. He'd meant to scare me, but he'd slipped, and now he was gone. The room dissolved, their voices a distant hum. I saw his face, the rope, the moment I hung up. I could have saved him. The cops asked about our call, and I confessed, my voice breaking as I admitted I'd dismissed him. They said it was an accident, that I wasn't to blame, but the words were ash. I did nothing. I saw our first meeting, his grin as he stole my pencil. I saw him promising to graduate, to make me proud. I saw the rope, always the rope, a noose, tightening around my guilt. Every April Fool's Day I relive it. The phone's glow, Kyle's plea, the silence after I hung up. I dropped out of college, unable to face the lecture halls we'd shared. My dorm feels haunted, his laughter echoing in the walls. This story draws from a tragedy where Abhishek Ragwanchi died during an April Fool's prank. He'd set up a video, call, a rope around his neck thinking it was harmless. But he slipped, and the prank became his end. I carry that weight, knowing I could have saved Kyle if only I'd believed him. The fluorescent lights flickered, their cold glow dancing on the polished floor, but it was the glint of a blade, sharp and merciless, that tore through the silence of my night shift. Foot Locker was my anchor, a job that kept the bills paid, and my tiny apartment lit. The closing shift, stretching into the early hours, was my world. Rows of gleaming sneakers lined the walls, their new rubber scent mingling with the faint hum of the air conditioner. Most nights it was just me and Emily, my co-worker, folding clothes and swapping stories to fill the quiet. The store felt safe, a haven from the chaos outside, but some nights it turned against me, its shadows hiding threats I couldn't see. I'd been at Foot Locker for 2 years, taking late shifts to cover rent my day job couldn't touch. The work was simple: greet customers, check sizes, watch for trouble. Emily made it bearable, her quick laugh and tales of her kid sister cutting through the monotony. Customers were usually predictable: teens chasing trends, parents hunting, bargains. But a month ago, a new face appeared. He was in his 20s, lanky, with sunken eyes and a faint stench of smoke clinging to his clothes. He'd drift through the aisles, fingers grazing the sneakers, never buying, never speaking. His gaze was unsettling, like he was sizing up the store, or us. The first time, I dismissed it. Just a browser, I told Emily, but my gut churned. His movements were too deliberate, his silence too heavy. I offered help, my voice tight, and he muttered a refusal, slipping out the door. He came back the next week, then the next. Always late, always empty-handed. Each visit tightened the knot in my stomach, a warning I couldn't shake. Emily felt it too. "That guy's trouble," she whispered one night, her eyes tracking him as he lingered by the LeBron 19s, his fingers tracing the laces like a claim. I nodded, my hand resting on the counter, inches from the phone. That night, the store was a ghost town, the clock crawling toward closing. Emily was in the back, humming as she restocked hoodies, her voice a faint comfort. I was at the counter wiping the register, the air thick with the scent of leather and polish. The door chimed and he walked in. Same lanky frame, same hollow eyes, same smoky reek. My heart kicked into gear, a primal alarm. Watch him, don't. Let him out of sight, my mind urged. He moved through the aisles, his steps slow, calculated, his hands brushing the racks. I followed at a distance, pretending to straighten shoes, my pulse hammering in my ears. He stopped at the clothing aisle, his back to me, rifling through the racks. His shoulders were tense, his hands moving too quickly. I edged closer, my breath shallow, and saw it. a bundle of shirts disappearing into his waistband. Adrenaline surged, my body acting before my mind caught up. "Stop him, don't let him get away," a voice commanded. "Hey," I shouted, my voice slicing the stillness. "What are you doing?" He froze, his head snapping toward me, his eyes, not scared but defiant, a predator cornered. He bolted, sprinting for the door, the stolen clothes bulging under his jacket. I lunged, my shoes squeaking on the floor, my hands grabbing his arm. "You're not leaving," I yelled, yanking him back. He was stronger than he looked, his body twisting like a trapped beast. We crashed into a rack, shirts scattering, the metal frame scraping the floor. Emily ran from the back, her face pale, shouting for security. "Help me hold him," I called, my grip tightening as he thrashed, his breath hot and ragged. The store was chaos, shelves trembling, the air thick with sweat and fear. I thought I had him, my weight pinning him against the rack, when he went still. Relief flickered. Maybe he'd given up. Then I saw the steel in his hand, the blade catching the flickering light. "Move, get away," my mind screamed, but my body froze. The knife plunged into my neck, a searing pain that stole my breath. Blood poured warm and slick, soaking my shirt, the metallic tang choking me. I stumbled back, my hands clawing at the wound, my vision blurring. Emily's screams pierced the haze, distant and warped, as I collapsed, the floor cold against my back. Time slowed, each heartbeat a thunder in my chest. The lights pulsed above, their flicker syncing with my fading pulse. I saw Emily frozen, her hands over her mouth. Other employees rushed in, their voices a frantic blur. Someone tackled the thief, wrenching the knife away, pinning him as he snarled. Security arrived, their boots pounding, but I was slipping, the world dimming. I thought of Jake, a co-worker who'd quit after a shoplifter pulled a knife on him last year. "This place will eat you alive," he'd said, his eyes haunted. I hadn't believed him, but now, with blood pooling beneath me, I understood. Woke in the hospital, my neck bandaged, pain throbbing with every breath. The doctors said I'd been lucky. The blade missed my artery by a fraction. Emily visited, her eyes red, recounting how the thief was arrested, charged with robbery and assault. She told me about Jake's attack, how he'd seen the same coldness in his attacker's eyes, how he'd never set foot in Foot Locker again. The store, once my refuge, was now a prison of memories, every aisle a potential trap. I went back to work, but the scar on my neck burned with every step. Every customer's glance, every shadow, sent my heart racing. At night, I'd see those eyes hollow, defiant, staring back, the blade glinting, promising to return. The warehouse loomed like a forgotten tomb, its silence a lie that hid the pulse of something alive, something watching from the shadows. The air was heavy, thick with the musty scent of old cardboard and synthetic fur, each breath a reminder of my isolation. I'd taken a week-long cleaning contract, a solitary job in a 5-story monolith that churned out toys for kids. Sweep the floors, dust the shelves, empty the bins, simple tasks for decent pay. But as I stepped into that cavernous space on my first night, the fluorescent lights flickering like a dying heartbeat, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold concrete. This wasn't just a workplace, it was a prison, and I was its only inmate. The warehouse was a labyrinth, its aisles stretching into darkness, lined with shelves that towered to the ceiling. Boxes of dolls, action figures, and plushies crowded, every inch, their plastic eyes glinting under my flashlight's beam like sentinels guarding secrets. I'd pictured toys as small, cheerful things, teddy bears maybe, or bright blocks. But these were monstrosities. Some stood as tall as me, others loomed 20 feet high, their limbs sprawled against walls like discarded giants. On my first night I found the worst of them, a blue-furred creature with a manic grin, its red lips smeared like fresh blood, its tag reading, Huggy Wuggy. No branding, no warmth, just a hollow stare that seemed to follow me as I pushed my broom. What kind of toy is this? I called my boss the next day, my voice unsteady. Clean around it, he said, or stuff it in a closet if it's in the way. So I did, dragging its limp, heavy frame to a janitor's closet, its fur cold and clammy against my skin, like touching something long dead. The second night, the warehouse turned hostile. The lights buzzed erratically, casting shadows that twisted and danced, mocking my every step. I was sweeping the third floor, the silence so thick it pressed against my eardrums, when a crash shattered the quiet, a sharp metallic clang from the far end of the aisle. My broom froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Who's here?" I called out, my voice thin, swallowed by the vastness. No answer. I crept forward, my flashlight trembling, its beam slicing through the gloom. At the aisle's end, Huggy Wuggy stood, slumped against a wall, its grin wider, its eyes catching the light like polished glass. "I locked you away." I checked the closet. It was empty, the lock untouched. Sweat prickled my neck, my pulse a frantic rhythm. I grabbed it, its weight dragging against the floor, and shoved it back into the closet, the door slamming with a force that echoed like a warning. "Stay there." By the third night, the warehouse wasn't just eerie, it was alive. The air crackled, with an unseen energy like the moment before lightning strikes. I was mopping the second floor, the wet slap of the mop my only company, when a voice slithered through the darkness. Deep, distorted, like a tape played backward. "Huggy. Huggy." It wasn't human, not quite, and it seemed to come from the walls themselves. I dropped the mop, the clatter deafening, my flashlight sweeping the aisle. At the far end, a figure stood. Tall, impossibly tall, its silhouette jagged like a broken puppet. "Is that a person?" I shouted, my voice cracking. But it vanished, melting into the shadows. My hands shook as I dialed my boss, words tumbling. "Out." "Something's here. I saw it." He laughed, his voice dismissive. "You're alone. It's just your head playing tricks." Alone? Then what's moving? The fourth night pushed me to the edge. I was on the fifth floor, the darkest, where the lights barely reached, their glow swallowed by the high ceiling. The air was colder here, heavy with the scent of mildew and something sharper, like burnt plastic. I was scrubbing a shelf when I heard it, a child's voice, soft and pleading like a lost girl trapped in the dark. "Please, where are you?" My blood froze. No one should be here, least of all a kid. I followed the sound, my boots echoing, my flashlight carving a fragile path. The voice grew louder, then stopped, replaced by a low hum, a lullaby warped into a nightmare. I turned a corner and froze. Another Huggy Wuggy, this one pink, its fur matted, its eyes black voids that seemed to pull me in. "Where did you come from?" Rage surged through me, drowning my fear. I grabbed it, its weight heavier than the blue one, and dragged it to a closet, the lock snapping shut with a sound that felt final. No more. But the warehouse had other plans. The lights flickered, plunging the aisle into darkness, then back to a sickly glow. I was back on the third floor, my hands trembling as I gripped my mop, when the child's voice returned, closer, right behind my ear. "Why did you lock me away?" I spun, my flashlight catching only empty shelves, their toys staring, their grins mocking. Then I saw it, Huggy Wuggy, the blue one, free again, standing at the aisle's end. Its head tilted, its mouth gaping, revealing rows of needle-like teeth that glinted like shards of glass. "This isn't real." I backed away, my breath shallow, but it moved, its limbs jerking, unnatural, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Ran, my boots pounding, the warehouse a blur of shadows and teeth. Its presence was a weight, pressing against my spine, its breath a cold whisper at my neck. I stumbled into a storage room, slamming the door, my hands fumbling for a weapon. The mop was still in my grip, its handle slick with sweat. The door shuddered, a low growl seeping through, vibrating in my bones. It's coming. I braced myself, my heart a frantic drum as the door burst open. Huggy Wuggy filled the frame, its eyes glowing faintly, its mouth a void of hunger. You won't take me. I swung the mop, its filthy head smacking into that maw, the stench of bleach and rot choking the air. It staggered, its limbs flailing, and I pushed past, sprinting for the fire escape. The warehouse seemed to twist, aisles shifting, shelves closing in like jaws. My lungs burned, my mind screamed, get out now. I reached the exit, the metal door cold against my hands as I shoved it open. The night air hit me, sharp and clean, the stars above indifferent. I glanced back, and there it was. Huggy Wuggy, standing in the doorway, its grin unyielding, its eyes promising a debt unpaid. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in the parking lot, the warehouse a dark silhouette against the sky. Every night, that grin haunts me, its teeth glinting in my dreams, its voice whispering my name. The warehouse is gone from my life, but its shadows linger, a reminder that some doors once opened never truly close. The candles flickered in the old church, their light dancing on the stone walls like whispers of forgotten prayers. I stood in the nave, the air heavy with incense and memory, my hands trembling as I lit a votive for Easter. This place had been my home, my sanctuary, where I'd grown up among hymns and stained glass. But now, as I gazed at the crucifix above the altar, a chill ran through me. Something's wrong here. The holiness feels like a lie. 3 years ago, this church became a tomb, and tonight, I'd come back to face its ghosts. I was raised in a devout family where Sunday Mass was as vital as breath. The church wasn't just a building, it was a community, a family of nuns, priests, and parishioners who knew my name. Sister Agnes, with her gentle smile, taught me to pray. Father Michael, stern but kind, led us through every holiday. Easter was the grandest, a day of resurrection and renewal, filled with painted eggs and joyous hymns. I volunteered here, cleaning pews, arranging flowers, my heart full of purpose. This was my place, until it wasn't. A few years ago, I noticed Sister Agnes changing. Her face grew gaunt, her eyes hollow, as if something were draining her from within. Is everything okay? I asked one day, my voice tentative. She smiled too quickly, her hands clutching her rosary. Everything's fine, what a lovely day, right? Her words were bright, but her eyes were shadows. I wanted to press, but Father Michael was always near, his presence a quiet command to let it be. She's just tired, I told myself, ignoring the unease that clung to me like damp cloth. The week before Easter was a whirlwind. We worked late, polishing candlesticks, draping the altar in white. Sister Agnes seemed frailer each day, her movements slow, her face pale as ash. Father Michael stayed close, his hand on her shoulder, his voice soothing. I trusted him, believed he'd care for her. He's a priest. He knows what's right. But that Easter Sunday, my world shattered. I arrived at dawn, expecting hymns and laughter, but found police cars, their lights slashing the morning. The church was cordoned off, the air thick with dread. What's happening? This can't be real. The news came like a blow. Sister Agnes was dead, her body found in the sacristy, pierced 30 times, an inverted cross carved into her chest. The image seared into my mind, her gentle hands now lifeless, her blood staining the holy ground. I collapsed outside, my sobs echoing in the empty lot. Who could do this? How could evil touch this place? The community reeled, whispers of cults and demons filling the void of answers. No suspects emerged, no justice served. The case went cold, and I fled, unable to face the church's stained glass without seeing blood. For 3 years, I worshipped elsewhere, seeking peace in unfamiliar pews. But the old church called to me, a wound that wouldn't heal. I have to go back. I have to understand. So I returned, my steps heavy as I crossed the threshold. The air was stale, the candles dim, but the memories were vivid. Sister Agnes's laughter, the warmth of Easter mornings. I stayed after Mass, hoping to find Father Michael, to share stories of better days. He was older now, his face lined, but his eyes held the same quiet authority. He'll help me heal. He has to. We sat in the vestry, the room dim, the walls lined with relics. "It's good to see you," he said, his voice warm. We spoke of the past, of Sister Agnes's kindness, of Easters long gone. But something felt off, a discord beneath his words. Why does he keep looking at the door? My unease grew, a cold weight in my chest. Then, without warning, he lunged, his arms wrapping around me like iron. His laughter was wild, a cackle that didn't belong to the man I knew. This isn't him. This can't be happening. "Shut up," he hissed, his grip tightening, "or you'll end up like her." My heart stopped. Like her? Sister Agnes? I fought, my nails clawing at his arms, my legs kicking against the floor. The vestry spun, the relics blurring into shadows. He did it, he killed her. His strength was unnatural, his eyes gleaming with madness. I saw Sister Agnes's face, her blood, the inverted cross, and knew I'd die here. Another sacrifice to whatever demon possessed him. Fight. You have to fight. I kicked harder, my heel striking his shin and his grip loosened just enough. I broke free, stumbling toward the door, my breath ragged. He chased me, his footsteps heavy, his voice pleading now, a lunatic's cry. "Come back. You don't understand." The church was a maze, its corridors dark, the air thick with dust and fear. I ran, my heart pounding, until I found a side exit, the night air cold against my skin. I didn't stop, racing home, locking every door, my body shaking as I called the police. He's a monster. He's always been a monster. They arrested Father Michael that night, his face calm as they led him away. The truth unraveled like a nightmare. He'd heard voices, whispers commanding him to kill. Sister Agnes was his first victim, her death a ritual to silence the chaos in his mind. The inverted cross was a decoy, meant to point to a satanic cult, not a priest. How did we miss it? How did I trust him? The church I loved was a lie, its sanctity defiled by blood. I see Sister Agnes every night, her eyes pleading, her wounds fresh. I see Father Michael, his laughter echoing, a sound I'll never escape. This story draws from a tragedy in Toledo, Ohio in 1980. Sister Margaret Ann Paul was found dead in a hospital chapel, stabbed over 30 times, an inverted cross carved into her chest. The case went cold for decades until Father Gerald Robinson, who led her funeral, was accused. He'd heard voices, acted in a twisted ritual, and hid in plain sight. The church I knew is gone, replaced by a shadow that haunts me still. Under the dim glow of the airport parking lot lights, the van's door slid open, revealing a glinting blade, poised to take everything I had. It was April Fool's night, a day meant for laughter and harmless tricks. But as I walked toward my car after a grueling shift, the air felt heavy, the shadows too deep. I worked for my family's aircraft service business, a small operation my dad had built from the ground up, now thriving at our city's largest airport. I'd been training to take over as CEO, spending late nights buried in paperwork, the hangar's hum a constant backdrop to my exhaustion. That night I'd texted my dad at 1:30 saying I was on my way home. It should have been a quick drive, but fate had other plans. The hangar was quiet as I left, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The parking lot was nearly empty, a sea of asphalt under flickering sodium lamps. My car a lone beacon at the far end. I walked briskly, my breath visible in the chilly air, the smell of jet fuel lingering on my clothes. Then I saw it. A van parked next to my car, its dark windows reflecting the faint light. It was too close, crowding my driver's side door, forcing me to squeeze through the narrow gap. My stomach tightened, a warning I couldn't ignore, but I pushed it down. It's just a poorly parked car. Get home, I told myself, fumbling with my keys. I slid into the gap, my jacket scraping the van's side, my door half open when the sound came. A sharp slide of metal, the van's door rolling open behind me. I turned, my heart lurching, and saw them. Masked figures, their eyes cold, one holding a knife that gleamed with menace. Don't fight. Do what they say, my mind screamed. But panic froze me. They grabbed me, hands rough and unyielding, dragging me into the van. The knife pressed against my throat, its edge cold and biting, the smell of rust and sweat filling the air. Shut up and empty your pockets, one growled, his voice muffled by the mask. Give us everything or we start cutting. My hands shook as I handed over my wallet, my ID, the $200 inside. They rifled through it, finding my address, their eyes narrowing. You live with your parents? One asked, his tone mocking. I begged them not to hurt my family, my voice breaking. But they laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the van's cramped space. We don't care about your pathetic family, the leader snarled. We want their money and you're going to get it for us. They forced me to tell them where my parents lived, the knife digging deeper with each hesitation, my mind racing with images of my mom and dad, safe in their home, unaware of the nightmare coming for them. I was trapped, the van's walls closing, in the air thick with the stench of gasoline and fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, time warped by terror. As they drove, the knife never leaving my throat. I prayed for a miracle, for someone to notice, but the airport was a ghost town. At that hour, I thought of a coworker, Mike, who'd been mugged in that same parking lot years ago. He'd fought back, earning a scar across his cheek, and warned me to always walk with security. I hadn't listened, and now I was paying the price. My life, reduced to a bargaining chip. My mother's voice broke through my memory, her perspective a sudden shift in the nightmare. She'd been waiting for me, her worry growing with each passing hour. My text at 1:30 had promised a quick drive home, but by 3 a.m., then 4 a.m., there was no sign of me. She sat in the living room, the clock's tick a cruel rhythm, her hands clasped tight, praying for my headlights to appear. At 5 a.m., the doorbell rang, a sharp sound that jolted her to her feet. She opened the door, hope fading to horror, as she found a ransom note, the words scrawled in jagged ink. We have your son. Get the money, or he dies. She called the police, her voice trembling, promising to do anything to get me back. They followed the note's instructions, gathering the money, ready to pay. But the kidnappers never contacted them again. Weeks turned to months, the silence a torment worse than any demand. My parents offered a reward, their pleas broadcast on the news, but no leads came. My mother clung to hope. Her nights spent staring at my empty room, my father's silence a weight she couldn't bear. They wanted to believe it was an April Fool's prank, a cruel joke that would end with my return, but the grim reality settled in. I was gone, and they might never know why. The story echoed a real case, one that haunted my mother as she searched. 2 days after their son, Robert Wilds, was kidnapped on April 1st in Lakeland, Thomas and Pamela Wilds received a ransom note. They complied, desperate to save their son, but the kidnappers vanished, leaving no trace. The FBI searched across states, Ohio, Tennessee, even Thailand, but Robert's whereabouts remained a mystery. His mother's words, "We just want him to come home," became my mother's mantra. A prayer whispered in the dark, a hope that faded with each passing day. The house was quiet, but the silence was a lie, masking the storm brewing in my mother's heart, a storm that would drown us all. Our home was supposed to be a haven, its warm wooden floors and soft lamplight a backdrop to my upcoming wedding, a celebration of love and new beginnings. I lived there with my fiancé, our days filled with plans for vows and flowers, but my mother's presence cast a shadow over every moment. She'd always been self-conscious, her mirror a cruel judge. But as my wedding neared, her insecurities twisted into something darker, a hunger for transformation that consumed her and threatened to consume me. Our house was a cozy two-story, its walls lined with family photos, each smile a memory of better days. My fiancé and I shared the upstairs, our bedroom a sanctuary of whispered dreams, while my mother claimed the downstairs, her space cluttered with diet books and empty promises. She'd moved in after Dad left, her confidence crumbling with each passing year. I'd hoped my engagement would lift her spirits, that she'd find joy in dress fittings and cake tastings, but instead, she fixated on her reflection, her eyes tracing every curve with a quiet despair. "I need to look perfect for your day," she'd say, her voice brittle, and I'd nod, swallowing the unease that grew with each word. It started innocently enough, a doctor's visit, a prescription for Ozempic to manage her diabetes. She told me it was for her health, but I saw the spark in her eyes, the hope that it would sculpt her into someone new. I didn't question it at first. I wanted her happy, wanted her to feel beautiful in the dress she'd chosen for my wedding. But within weeks the changes came, swift and unsettling. Her cheeks hollowed, her skin grew papery, stretched tight over bones that seemed to sharpen overnight. Her eyes, once warm and full of life, sank into dark hollows, like windows to a place I couldn't reach. What's happening to her? I'd catch her staring at herself, her fingers tracing her thinning frame, a smile flickering that wasn't hers. The Ozempic wasn't just reshaping her body, it was rewriting her soul. She grew cold, her words sharp, her laughter gone. She'd snap at me for small things, her voice laced with venom. "You wouldn't understand," she'd hiss when I asked if she was okay. My fiancé tried to help. His gentle questions met with glares or worse, threats low and chilling that made us retreat to our room. At night I'd hear her downstairs, pacing, muttering, the furniture scraping as she rearranged it in some frantic ritual. "I need to be perfect," I'd hear her whisper, her voice not to me but to something else, something in the dark. I confronted her one night, my heart heavy with worry. She stood in the kitchen, the fridge door open, her silhouette gaunt under the harsh light. "Mom, you're scaring me. You're not yourself." Her head turned slowly, her eyes glinting like a stranger's. "You think I'm ugly, don't you? Everyone does." I shook my head, tears stinging, but she didn't see me. She saw only her reflection in the fridge's glass, her fingers clawing at her skin as if she could peel away what she hated. I backed away, the air thick with her paranoia, and vowed to keep my distance, to focus on the wedding, to believe she'd snap out of it. But she didn't. The Ozempic took more than her weight. It took her sanity. She'd hide the syringes, her hands trembling as she injected, her doses higher than prescribed. I found empty vials in her drawers, her purse even under her pillow, each one a silent scream for perfection. "Give me more Ozempic," she'd demand, her voice raw, her eyes wild. I begged her to stop, to listen to the doctor, but she'd laugh, a sound like breaking glass. "You want me fat for your wedding, don't you? You want me to ruin it?" My fiancé tried reasoning, but she'd turn on him, her words venomous. "Stay out of it or I'll make you regret it." We retreated, tiptoeing around her, our minefield of her rage. I couldn't give up on her, though. I thought if I could remove the Ozempic, she'd return. The mother who'd braided my hair, who'd danced with me in the kitchen. One night when she left the house, I seized my chance. I scoured her room, my hands shaking as I found vials hidden in socks, behind books, under floorboards. I gathered them all, their glass clinking like bones, and dumped them in the trash, my heart pounding with hope and fear. I crawled back to bed, praying she wouldn't notice, praying she'd wake up herself again. She noticed. The crash of plates woke me, a shattering that echoed through the house, followed by her screams. Raw, unhinged, like an animal in pain. I crept downstairs, the darkness pressing against me, my bare feet cold on the wood. In the kitchen, she stood a silhouette against the moonlit window, her hands clutching shards of broken porcelain. "Where is it?" she snarled, her voice not hers, her eyes burning with a madness I'd never seen. "I threw it out," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You were killing yourself." She lunged, her hands closing around my throat, her nails digging into my skin. "You took it. You want me to fail?" I gasped, clawing at her, her strength unnatural, her breath hot and sour. "Get off me, please." My fiancé burst in, his voice a roar as he pulled her away, her screams echoing as she fought like a caged beast. I collapsed, my throat raw, my body shaking. We locked ourselves in our room, the silence that followed heavier than her rage. I didn't call the police, I couldn't. She was my mother, and the wedding was days away. I clung to the hope that it was a phase, that love could pull her back. It has to. The next morning we moved cautiously, staying together, avoiding her. We entered the kitchen, the air stale with the scent of spilled wine and broken dreams. Then we saw her, sprawled on the floor, her body still, her face twisted in a smile that wasn't human, a grin of triumph or torment, I couldn't tell. She's gone. I froze, my scream trapped, the image searing into my soul. Her eyes, open and empty, stared through me, her skin gray, her hands clutching an empty vial. Ozempic took her. My wedding was a funeral. As I walked down the aisle, my white dress felt like a shroud, my husband's face blurred by tears. I saw her in every shadow, her coffin, her smile, her voice hissing, "Give me more Ozempic." The house is empty now, but her presence lingers, a curse I can't escape. Every night I see her grin, her eyes accusing, her hands reaching. The fluorescent lights of Foot Locker buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the shelves of gleaming sneakers. I stood in line, my younger brother bouncing beside me, his eyes fixed on the display of Jordan 2 retro winged shoes. This wasn't just a shopping trip. It was a promise kept, a moment to make him smile. But something's wrong. The air feels thick, like a storm's brewing. The crowd pressed closer, their voices a low hum of greed, and I felt a chill despite the store's heat. I'd brought my brother here to make him happy, but now I feared we'd walked into a nightmare. Growing up, I was more than a brother to him. I was the father he never had. Our dad left when we were kids, and I stepped up, working odd jobs to buy him clothes, toys, anything to keep his world bright. He was a fashion obsessive, always chasing the latest Nikes, Yeezys, or Jordans. At 16, he'd outgrown his old sneakers, their soles worn thin from schoolyard swagger. When he heard about the Jordan 2 retro release, his face lit up, his voice bubbling with excitement. How could I say no? So here we were, in a Minneapolis Foot Locker on a frigid Saturday morning, surrounded by a sea of strangers hungry for the same prize. The line outside stretched around the block, a restless beast of puffy coats and impatient mutters. We'd arrived early, but the wait tested my patience, the cold biting through my jacket. My brother didn't care, his chatter about sneaker drops and school friends a welcome distraction. He's happy, that's enough. But as we inched forward, the crowd grew restless, shoulders bumping, voices rising. By the time we reached the store, the air was electric, charged with anticipation and something darker. Stay close, kid. This doesn't feel right. Inside, the store was chaos. Sneakers lined the walls, their price tags taunting, but all eyes were on the Jordan display. The cashier announced only one pair remained, size too big for my brother, but he didn't care. "I'll grow into them," he said, clutching the box, his smile brighter than the store's lights. He's got what he wanted. We're almost done. I reached for my wallet, relief washing over me when a shadow loomed behind us. A bald, middle-aged man, his face twisted with anger, shoved forward. "Those are mine," he snarled, grabbing for the box. Who is this guy? Why is he so desperate? "Hey, back off," I said, stepping between him and my brother. "We got here first." The man's eyes narrowed, his voice loud enough to draw stares. "I've been waiting 5 hours. You kids cut in line." My brother shrank back, his hands tightening on the box. "He's just a kid, leave him alone." "You're a grown man," I said, my voice steady, despite the heat rising in my chest. "If you got a problem, talk to me." The crowd murmured, their eyes hungry for drama, and I felt the store closing in, the lights too bright, the air too thin. The man lunged, his hands clawing at the box, and my brother stumbled. I pushed him back, my fists clenched, ready to protect what was ours. "Don't let him take it. Don't let him hurt your brother." But the crowd erupted, a wave of bodies surging forward, all desperate for the last pair. Shouts filled the air, fists flying, shelves toppling. I lost sight of my brother in the chaos, my heart pounding as I fought to reach him. "Where is he?" "I can't lose him." The man was relentless, his face a mask of rage, and then I saw it, a glint of metal as he reached behind his back. Time slowed, the store a blur of motion and noise. "He's got a gun." I raised my hands, stepping back, my eyes locked on the barrel. "Don't do this," I said, my voice shaking. The crowd parted, some running, others frozen. My brother was somewhere in the melee, and I couldn't find him. "Get to him. You have to." The man's finger hovered over the trigger, his eyes wild, and then he turned, bolting for the door. I ran after him, my feet slipping on the trashed floor, but a stranger grabbed me, pulling me back. "It's not safe," he said, his grip iron. I fought, desperate to chase the man, to find my brother, but more hands held me, their voices, a chorus of warning. The store was a wreck, sneakers scattered, blood staining the tiles. Blood? Whose blood? I broke free, my heart in my throat, and saw 2 figures on the floor, motionless. One was my brother, his face pale, his shirt torn. I dropped beside him, my hands shaking as I checked for a pulse. He's alive. Thank God he's alive. But his arm was bloodied, a gash from the chaos, and his eyes were wide with fear. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and I held him, guilt choking me. "I failed you. I brought you here. The ambulance came, its lights flashing through the shattered windows. They took my brother, saying I was too frantic to ride along. Driving to the hospital, I gripped the wheel, my mind replaying the gun, the blood, the moment I lost him in the crowd. What if he doesn't make it? What if I lose him forever? He survived, as did the other victim, but the man with the gun vanished, his face burned into my memory. The police scoured the store, watched the footage, but he was gone, a ghost carrying the last pair of Jordans and my piece. Every day I relive it. The crowd's roar, the gun's cold stare, my brother's blood. I see us laughing in his room, him showing off his sneaker collection, promising to wear them proudly. I see the Foot Locker, a place of dreams turned nightmare. This story draws from a 2025 incident in Minneapolis, where a fight over Jordan, 2 retro Winged shoes at a Foot Locker, left 2 injured. The crowd's greed turned deadly, and the suspect remains at large. I'll never step into a Foot Locker again, haunted by the cost of a pair of shoes. The glow of my monitor was my world, a digital battlefield where victories were sweet, but I never imagined a game could summon a monster to my door. My bedroom was a fortress of screens and snacks, the hum of my PC a constant companion. I'd been diving deep into Poppy Playtime, a horror game that thrilled with its creepy toys and abandoned factory. Its multiplayer mode, Project Playtime, was my latest obsession. 6 players building a giant toy to escape, 1 playing a monster hunting them down. That night I joined a European server, my ping a bit shaky, and faced off against a player named Kang, his username flashing from somewhere in Asia. Little did I know that name would haunt me, not in pixels, but in flesh and blood. The game was intense, a chaotic dance of strategy and survival. My team scrambled to assemble the toy. Our avatars dodging vents where Kang's monster, a snarling huggy-wuggy, lurked. His trash talk crackled through the chat, bold and relentless. "You're all trash, I'll crush you." I smirked, my fingers flying over the keyboard, my focus razor sharp. One by one my teammates fell, their avatars swallowed by Kang's. Toothy grin, but I held on, pulling off a last-second win that sealed the toy's completion. The victory screen blazed, and I couldn't resist rubbing it in. "Nice try, Kang. Better luck next time." His silence felt heavy, like a storm gathering, but I laughed it off, the thrill of triumph buzzing in my veins. Then the messages started. My Steam inbox pinged, Kang's name glaring in all caps. "Trash player, you're nothing." His words were venom, each one a jab at my pride. I fired back, my tone smug. "I beat you. Deal with it." That set him off, his messages escalating to threats. "I'll find you, I'll make you bleed." I rolled my eyes, used to gamer rage, and blocked him, imagining him screaming at his screen, his keyboard a wreck of spit and fury. Just another keyboard warrior. I'd seen it before, empty threats from sore losers, nothing more. But Kang was different. Minutes later, a new account messaged me, its profile blank, no games, no picture. Just a string of numbers, an IP address, followed by my street address, down to the zip code. How does he know this? My stomach twisted, a cold, sweat prickling my neck. I checked my router, my VPN, my settings. Everything was secure, or so I thought. He's bluffing. Kang lived halfway across the world. No way he'd act on it. I blocked the new account, reported both, and tried to shake it off. The game had been fun, but this was too much. I rallied my friends for safer lobbies, sticking to private servers, avoiding randoms like Kang. Days passed, the incident fading like a bad dream. Poppy Playtime still pulled me in, its eerie factory a thrill I couldn't resist. One night, we played until 2 a.m., my room a cocoon of laughter and jump scares. Exhausted, I crashed into bed, the glow of my monitor lingering in my eyes as I drifted off. An hour later, I woke, my bladder nagging. The room was dark, the city's hum faint through my window. I rubbed my eyes, groggy, and froze. A silhouette stood over me, tall and still, a shadow carved from the night. This isn't real. My heart slammed against my ribs, my breath shallow as I blinked, hoping it was a trick of sleep. But it wasn't. The figure shifted, its head tilting, a glint of metal catching the moonlight. "Who are you?" I opened my mouth to scream, but my voice choked, trapped by terror. The figure spoke, its voice low, accented, chillingly familiar. "You don't recognize me. You beat me in Poppy playtime, now it's my turn." Kang. His name hit me like a blow, my mind reeling. How is he here? He raised his arm, a hammer gleaming, its head heavy with intent. I scrambled back, my bed creaking, my back against the wall. "Stay away!" I shouted, my voice breaking, but he lunged, the hammer swinging. Pain exploded in my skull, a white-hot burst that blurred the world. I felt the impact again, and again, each blow a thunderclap, my vision swimming with blood and stars. This can't be happening. My stepdad's voice cut through, distant, frantic, the light flipping on as he charged in. Kang fled, a shadow vanishing through the window, but the damage was done. I collapsed, the world fading, my head a ruin of pain. I woke in the hospital, morphine dulling the fire in my skull, my head bandaged, my thoughts fractured. The police filled in the gaps. Kang, a 20-year-old from New Jersey, had flown to Florida, driven by a grudge born in a game. He'd bought a hammer, a flashlight, and waited for me to leave my desk. My stepdad's intervention saved me. My skull was cracked, my scalp torn, but my brain, miraculously, was intact. Kang was caught days later trying to board a plane back to Asia, his face blank, his motive a twisted logic of revenge. He was a bad person online, he told the cops, as if that justified the blood on his hands. Every night, I see that hammer, its arc frozen in my dreams, Kang's voice echoing. My bedroom, once a haven, is a prison of fear, its shadows hiding his silhouette. I don't game anymore. The glow of my monitor feels like a beacon for monsters. Kang's rage wasn't just pixels, it was real, and it nearly took my life. The apartment was my sanctuary, its walls echoing with music and dreams. But beneath the rhythm of our lives, a poison was seeping, twisting my roommate into a stranger. Our shared space was a haven of creativity, its cluttered rooms filled with guitar picks, lyric notebooks, and the faint hum of ambition. She was a musical artist, her voice a rising star, her name whispered in clubs and trending online. I was her quiet counterpart, content to cheer from the sidelines. But as her fame grew, so did her obsession with perfection, an obsession that would drag us both into a nightmare. Our apartment was a loft in the city's heart, its high ceilings and wide windows capturing the pulse of the streets below. We'd split the rent for years, our lives intertwined like the chords of her songs. She was vibrant, her laughter filling the space, her energy a spark that lit up even the darkest days. But beneath her charisma was a shadow, a relentless need to be flawless, her mirror a judge that never softened. She'd spend hours studying her reflection, her fingers tracing her waist, her eyes narrowing at flaws only she could see. "The internet's watching," she'd say, her voice tight, and I'd nod, unsure how to ease the weight she carried. It started with whispers of Ozempic, a drug she'd heard about from industry friends, a miracle for shedding pounds. She, Didn't have diabetes, but that didn't stop her. It's just a boost, she told me, her smile forced, her eyes avoiding mine. I was skeptical, my mind flashing to warnings about side effects, nausea, organ strain, worse. I tried to dissuade her, my words gentle. You're stunning already, you don't need this. But she brushed me off, her laugh sharp, her resolve ironclad. You don't get it. I have to be perfect. Days later, she came home with a vial, its liquid glinting like a promise, and I felt a chill I couldn't name. The changes came fast, like a melody shifting to a minor key. Her curves melted away, her skin stretching tight over bones that seemed to sharpen daily. Her face, once full of life, grew gaunt, her cheeks hollow, her eyes sinking into shadows that made her look haunted. What's it doing to her? She moved, differently, her steps slower, her hands trembling as she poured coffee or strummed her guitar. I'd catch her staring at herself, her fingers clawing at her thinning arms, a smile flickering that wasn't hers. The apartment, once warm, felt colder, its air thick with an unspoken dread. Her personality shifted too, her warmth replaced by a brittle edge. She'd snap at me for small things, dishes in the sink, music too loud, her voice laced with a venom I didn't recognize. Mind your own business, she'd hiss when I asked about the Ozempic, her eyes flashing with paranoia. She withdrew, her door locked for hours, her music replaced by silence or, worse, low murmurs I couldn't make out. At night I'd hear her pacing, her footsteps a restless rhythm, her voice muttering to someone or something in the dark. I need to be the best, I'd hear, her tone desperate, and I'd lie awake, my heart heavy with worry. I found the first clue by accident, a discarded vial in the trash, its label showing a dose higher than prescribed. Then another, and another hidden in her drawers, her purse even taped under her desk. My stomach twisted as I realized she was taking more than she admitted, far more than safe. I confronted her, my voice shaking. You're hurting yourself. This has to stop. She turned slowly, her eyes cold, her smile a slash of defiance. You're jealous, aren't you? You want me to fail. Her words cut deep, a betrayal that stung worse than her anger. I backed away, the air between us crackling with her madness, and vowed to keep my distance, to protect myself from the stranger she'd become. But the truth grew uglier. One night I found boxes, dozens of them stashed in her closet, each prescribed by a different doctor. She's scheming. She'd been gaming the system, collecting Ozempic like a lifeline, injecting it multiple times a week, maybe daily. Her body was a skeleton now, her skin flaking like old paint, her hair thinning in clumps. She'd stopped eating, her fridge empty, her meals replaced by those vials. I'm almost there, she'd whisper to herself, her voice a chant, her eyes fixed on some unattainable horizon. I wanted to help, to save her, but fear held me back. She wasn't my friend anymore. She was a ghost, hollowed out by her own hunger. The breaking point came late one night. I couldn't sleep, the apartment's silence oppressive, broken only by her voice from her room. I don't want to do it anymore, she said, her tone pleading. You know you need it. Another voice replied, not hers, but inside her, a cruel echo urging her on. Be the hottest. Stick the needle in. I froze, my breath shallow, my skin prickling. She's talking to herself. I crept to her door, my hand trembling as I pushed it open. She sat on her bed, a syringe in hand, her face a mask of torment. My followers said I looked better before, she whispered, tears streaming, but the other voice cut through. They're Liars, keep going. I couldn't stay silent. Stop this, you need help. Her head snapped up, her eyes wild, her smile twisted. You're the liar, she snarled, her voice not hers. She lunged, the syringe glinting, its needle aimed at me. I stumbled back, my heart racing, her strength unnatural as she grabbed my arm. You'll see how it feels, she hissed, the needle inches from my skin. I fought, my nails digging into her wrist, her breath hot and ragged. Get away now. I broke free, slamming her door, my body shaking as I barricaded myself in my room. She's gone. She's not her. Morning brought no relief. I found her in the bathroom, standing before the mirror, her body a wraith, her bones sharp under gray skin. Her eyes met mine, empty, her smile a grotesque parody of joy. I'm perfect now, she said, raising another syringe. I backed away, my scream trapped, as she charged, the needle gleaming like a fang. This can't be real. I don't remember how I escaped, only the blur of her face, her hands, her voice promising pain. Every night I see her, her skeletal grin haunting my dreams, her syringe glinting in the dark. The apartment is empty now, but her shadow lingers, a reminder that perfection can be a curse. The faint flicker of a television screen haunted our home, its blue glow slithering beneath my son's bedroom door like a serpent's tongue. I stood in the darkened hallway, the house silent except for that relentless hum, a sound that had become the pulse of our lives. My hand trembled as it reached for the doorknob, a cold metal reminder of the son I'd lost to that light. He's in there, consumed by a monster I can't fight. At 40 years old, my son was no longer the boy I'd raised, but a shadow trapped by poppy playtime and its grinning demon, Huggy Wuggy. Tonight I'd confront him or let him slip away forever. I was a father who gave too freely, my love a bandage for wounds I couldn't heal. When my son was a child, his eyes sparkled at every new game console I brought home, Nintendo's bright jingles, PlayStation's sleek promise of adventure. Each one was an offering, a way to mend the hours I spent working, the evenings I missed his school plays, the years my wife and I drifted apart. He'll outgrow this, I thought, watching him lose himself in pixelated battles, his laughter a fleeting warmth that kept me going. But the years piled on, and the games became his world, chaining him to a screen while life passed by unnoticed. He was bright once, a boy who dreamed of building rockets, his sketchbooks filled with stars and spaceships. But school became a war, his grades crumbling, his friends vanishing one by one. Jobs lasted weeks, each ending in a shrug and a return to his room. By 20, he was a ghost in our home, his life confined to a basement bedroom that grew darker with each passing year. I should have stopped it then. I bought more games, hoping they'd spark something in him, but they only fed the void. At 30, he was still with us, a man in years but a child in spirit, tethered to our care by a need we couldn't refuse. Poppy Playtime was the final mistake. I bought it on a whim, thinking it was just another game, a colorful distraction with its eerie dolls and haunted factory. But Huggy Wuggy, with its blue fur and razor-sharp grin, sank its claws into him. It's not just a game, I realized too, late, as he spoke of Huggy like a companion, his voice feverish, his eyes alight with a fervor I didn't recognize. His room became a shrine, the air heavy with the stench of unwashed clothes, stale snacks, and something worse, decay. He stopped showering, stopped eating with us, his body wasting as he sat in his gaming chair, the TV's glow his only light. He's dying in there, and I let it happen. My wife and I watched him fade, our hearts breaking with every locked door, every unanswered call to dinner. We can't let him stay like this, she said, her voice cracking, her eyes red from sleepless nights. We tried to intervene, begging him to seek help, to find a job, to reclaim his life. You can't throw me out, he'd reply, his tone soft but laced with guilt, twisting our love into chains. He's our son. We can't abandon him. So we relented, hoping he'd tire of poppy playtime, that the boy who once drew stars would return. But each new chapter of the game pulled him deeper, his room a cave, the TV an altar, Huggy Wuggy his deity. The turning point came one night when I found him whispering to the screen, his fingers tracing Huggy's image as if it could touch him, back. This isn't my son. My wife's sobs echoed through the house, her pleas for action a mirror to my own despair. Do something, she said, and I nodded, my resolve hardening despite the fear gnawing at me. Face him. Save him. I spent days preparing, pacing the hallway, the TV's glow a taunt that mocked my failure. Finally, I stood before his door, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. Knock. You have to do this. I rapped on the wood, the sound sharp in the silent house. No answer. I knocked again, harder, my knuckles aching. Open the door. Break the spell. I turned the knob, and the stench hit me, a rancid wave of sweat, mold, and rot that stole my breath. I gagged, my hand covering my mouth, but I stepped. Inside, the room a tomb lit by the TV's flickering blue. My son sat in his gaming chair, his back to me, his silhouette a statue carved from neglect. He's still alive. He has to be. Son, I said, my voice trembling. We need to talk. The screen showed Huggy Wuggy, its eyes hollow, its grin a promise of ruin. He didn't move, but his voice was low, a hiss that chilled me. His name is Huggy Wuggy. That's not him. I stepped closer, the floor sticky beneath my shoes, the air thick with decay. Turn it off, I said, my voice rising. This ends now. Pull the plug. Free him. I reached for the TV's cord, my fingers brushing the plastic when he spun, his face a nightmare. His eyes were sunken, his skin gray, his mouth stretched in a smile that echoed Huggy's. This isn't my son. This can't be real. He lunged, his arms wrapping around me, his strength a shock that defied his frail frame. Fight. Get out. I pushed against him, my hand slipping on his clammy skin, his teeth snapping inches from my face. The room spun, the TV's glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Huggy's face a specter watching us. He's gone. The game took him. I kicked, my heel striking his leg, and he stumbled, his grip loosening. I broke free, staggering to the door, my breath ragged, my heart a drum in my chest. He collapsed, his body crumpling to the floor, and I froze, torn between fear and love. Help him. He's still your son. But the room felt alive. The TV's light a warning I couldn't ignore. I slammed the door, my wife's cries piercing the silence as she saw me. What have I done? We didn't call for help. Too afraid of what he'd become, too broken to face the truth. Days later, the stench grew unbearable, a living thing that seeped through the house. I returned, my hand shaking, and opened the door. The sight stole my breath. My son, still in his chair, his body rigid, his face locked in that Huggy Wuggy grin. He's dead. My boy is dead. The autopsy said a stroke, a blood clot from endless hours in that chair, likely dislodged during our struggle. I killed him. I pushed him too far. I see him every night, his gray face, his toothy smile. The TV's glow, a curse that binds me. I hear Huggy Wuggy's name, a whisper in the dark. I failed him. Why didn't I save him? This story echoes a tragedy where a 25-year-old man known as DC played games for 73 hours straight and died of a stroke in an internet cafe. He'd lost everything to gaming, and my son followed that path, a warning of what obsession can steal. I live with the guilt, a father who fed the monster that took his child.